book lovers, it is G-Swizz here, and I'm here today to talk about the books that I don't plan to reread. If you didn't know, this is a 7 on Sunday topic, and I am the host of 7 on Sunday. I will link the Goodreads page down in the description where you can check it out and you can participate in a topic in the future, or you can suggest a topic. And I decided to put this down as a topic because, as some of you guys may or may not know, I am a pretty forgiving person when it comes to books that I have completely distanced myself from. Meaning that sometimes I will recognize that I was in a different headspace while reading a book or reading a series, and I will think to myself, maybe I will give that a second chance another day. Maybe I will reread it, I will re-experience a book or a series in the future, and maybe I'll change my mind about it. With the books that I'm going to be talking about today, I hold a grudge. I do not plan on rereading these books in the future. I do not plan on giving them second chances. I have talked about the books that I plan to give a second chance in the future some time ago on my channel. I don't know if I've made a video like that recently, but what I do know is that I am constantly thinking about the books that I would want to give a second chance, that I did read at a certain time. Maybe I read it during a book hangover, or I was reading it during a tough time and I just could not fully pay attention to it, or maybe, just maybe, I read it when I was really young and I could not comprehend it. And I know that it would be better if I experienced it from an older age. Perfect example of that is Daughter of Smoke and Bone. I read that series when I was 19. I did not like it. I was looking for a paranormal romance. I didn't feel like I got that. However, I ended up rereading it at the age of 25 or 26 and I fell in love with it. And I believe it's one of the best fantasy book series ever written, personally. So I do believe in second chances, but with these books, I don't think I can give them second chances. And I will go into the reasons why as we go through this video. So I guess without further ado, let's get straight into this list of books that I do not plan to reread ever. The first book series on this list, funnily enough, I've actually reread already, and I regret every moment of my reread. I reread Carnival, and I ended up reading Legendary and Finale. I appreciate those who love the series. I understand that there are so many readers out there who take comfort in the series. I have friends who love and adore the series, and I do my best not to talk smack about it, but right here I'm gonna talk smack about it. Okay, I hate the series. The reason why I don't just dislike it, I hate it, is because of the way that it was written. I personally think that the entire story could have been a dual POV story with the two sisters. I also found the love interest to be so annoying. I don't think any of them understand what it is like to have healthy communication. I personally like Scarlet and Tella. I did find Tella to be annoying in the first book, and I think that Scarlet is okay, but I don't have an emotional connection to them, and the only character I felt like I had somewhat of an emotional connection to was Jax. And so for that reason, I am planning on reading Once Upon a Broken Heart, but I don't ever plan on rereading Carnival, and I honestly feel like it was a mistake to reread Carnival and then read the rest of the books in the series, because I ended up being so disappointed by the Carnival series. It's probably my least favorite full series I read last year. I'm just a bit bitter about it, honestly. I can understand the appeal, I just really don't like how it was written, and I think if I read this book series when I was 18, then maybe I would have enjoyed it. At the age of 27, I just couldn't. And the next book series I hold a grudge for is the Cursebreaker series by Bridget Kemmerer. However, I will specifically never reread A Heart So Fierce and Broken and A Vow So Bold and Deadly. I do plan on rereading A Curse So Dark and Lonely sometime. I just want to reread that first book when I am separated from the last two books in the series. I still keep these books on my shelves, and the reason why I keep them on my shelves is because I have these beautiful spines down there. I'm not too sure if you guys can see them, but like the stained glass window spines, they are my favorite thing ever because they remind me of Beauty and the Beast. I love the stained glass window aesthetic of Beauty and the Beast, and I really like what the Bookish Box did with the beautiful spines for their Cursebreakers dust jackets. So I don't think I could get rid of the other two books because I don't want to break the beautiful aesthetic. However, I love the first book enough to keep it and to want to reread it in the future. I personally love the first book. It was a very well done Beauty and the Beast reimagining, but as the series continued, the Beast was just just not experiencing character development. And in my personal opinion, that is completely against the original intention of Beauty and the Beast. The purpose of the Beast's arc in Beauty and the Beast is to experience character development. So then we see he becomes beautiful regardless of his appearance. The other two books in the series don't paint him in a good light. The second book doesn't really follow him much in general, and as much as I appreciate that we get Gray's story, I don't really care about Liamara, and I really hate her family. Like, I really don't like following them, and I don't understand how they are the way that they are. I honestly don't enjoy following their kingdom. And then the third book is just terrible because it really just trashes Ren's character, and I think that Ren had much more potential to be written so much better. I don't plan on continuing my reread of the series if I end up going back to read A Curse so Dark and Lonely. And the next book I don't plan to reread ever is Blade of Secrets by Trisha Levenseller. I have had a few people try to convince me to finish the duology. I can't do it. Blade of Secrets does not feel like a complete book. I do love seeing the anxiety representation that we have going on through our protagonist. If we are talking about the romance aspect, if we're talking about the plot aspect, it's just not worth it. I don't have much more to say about this. I don't want to give my money to duologies that should be standalones. I'm just so done with the trend of splitting standalone concepts into duologies. So I don't plan on rereading Blade of Secrets anytime soon, and I don't plan on reading Master of Iron. I don't plan on completing this duology. The next book series I will never reread is The Maze Runner. I had the time of my life reading this book series when I first did. So if you guys don't know this about me, in terms of my young adult dystopian craze, I started off reading Divergent, and then I went into The Hunger Games, and then I went into The Maze Runner. At the time that The Maze Runner and Divergent and The Hunger Games were out, they were considered a holy trinity of dystopians, and I think that's also because the Maze Runner movie came out somewhere between 2014 and 2015, and that was some short time after Divergent released in cinemas as well. I got into the Maze Runner series. I enjoyed it. I only read the original trilogy. I did not read the prequels, and then things came out about James Dashner. I can't reread the series knowing what I know about James Dashner. Not only that, the series was just okay. I did find myself attached to the characters. However, justice for Brenda, like Brenda was my favorite love interest, and I'm not gonna lie, I personally think that Thomas should have chosen Brenda. I know that people don't have that opinion, but I love Brenda, okay? Justice for Brenda. Look, other than that, I'm not necessarily super bitter about the book series. I mean, I understand that things happen toward the end of the book series. Now James has kind of come back to fix that mistake. I also watched the movies, and I think at this point, knowing that I've watched the movies and knowing that they take another direction sometime later, it kind of clouds the way that I would visualize what happens in the book. I really enjoyed the Maze Runner series when I read them, but I cannot bring myself to reread them. I don't want to support James Dashner ever after the things that came out about him, and I'm pretty sure he also came forward about it, so even though I meant to say allegedly, I think he might have confirmed it. It has been a while since this was revealed. I just don't feel comfortable supporting him going forward, so I don't plan on reading any prequels. I don't plan on reading any sequels. I don't plan on reading anything from the Maze Runner world if he is involved. And speaking of authors I no longer want to support, I don't plan on rereading 13 Reasons Why. I mean, there are a couple of reasons why I don't. I don't want to support Jay Asher in any way, shape, or form, knowing what has come out about him as well, allegedly. And also, I kind of agree now. I do think that this glorifies the idea of unaliving, and apparently that's also worse in the Netflix show as well. I have made the personal decision to stay away from the Netflix show. I have not ever watched an episode of it. I don't ever plan on doing that. I mean, look, watching the first season seemed pretty appealing to me, but I stayed away from it, and as the TV show continued, I would just hear more and more reviews come out about it, and just seeing that it has taken a turn for the negative, not just because it's poorly written, but because the TV show started defending characters who should not have been defended. I used to watch a bunch of video essays like tearing the show apart. So I found out what happens in the show without needing to go to Netflix to find out. I didn't want to give the show a view, personally. I also just didn't feel comfortable with watching the show at all with what came to light about Jay Asher. Regardless of his involvement or lack thereof, I remember the team was like, oh, he has no involvement in this adaptation. And look, okay, cool. He doesn't have involvement, but that's the story that he wrote. I don't even think that he should have been the one to write that story, considering what came out about him, allegedly. So I don't plan on supporting Jay Asher in the future, and I don't plan on rereading 13 Reasons Why. Knowing what he has done, it has just completely tainted the story for me, but also I realize more and more about the story as I grow older and I mature. And the next book I plan on never rereading is The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes by Suzanne Collins. It is tempting because the movie is going to come out sometime toward the end of the year, and I am so looking forward to watching the movie. I honestly don't care about the plot. I just want another Hunger Games experience in the theaters again. I just want to feel like a teenager again while I'm in the theater watching a Hunger Games movie. This franchise makes me feel so nostalgic, and I am so happy that Camilo and I watched the films together sometime last year. I got him into the Hunger Games franchise. I just remember rewatching those films sometime last year and absolutely just remembering all the good times that we all experienced in cinemas, actually seeing these books come to life. And even though the Hunger Games trilogy is much better than The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, I am just so happy that we've got the same team behind it. I believe we have the same team behind it. I would be sad if the movie is not good, but I believe that it is going to be good based on the fact that we have the same studio and hopefully we have the same team behind it. I really love the trailer. The trailer got me so pumped, but I am not going to reread this book. I don't like being in President Snow's head, and what I personally love about the Hunger Games movie franchise is that we are not just following the point of view character. The Hunger Games franchise writers have written the story in a way where we are following multiple POVs, we are seeing multiple scenes pan out in the background, and it just adds so much more dimension to the story. And that's why, even though the Hunger Games books are great, the movies are kind of better because we get to see the capital perspective. We get to see what's going on in the background. I think that that is so important. I am very excited to see how they are going to adapt the story, but I personally do not want to revisit it in book form at all. So I'm not going to do that, and I'm not planning to do that ever again. I've actually unhauled The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. It's no longer on my shelves, and I don't think I could ever really change my mind about the book, honestly. The next time I read the Wicked Villain series, I am just going to skip The Sea Witch. The Sea Witch is the 5th book in the series, and I hold a grudge. I do not like this book. I don't think that the relationship dynamic in the book is healthy whatsoever. I don't like how Zuriel is treated, and I don't like how Zuriel is expected to cooperate and to forgive them within the 2 weeks that we are given for these two characters. I don't appreciate how Ursa and Alaric betrayed her. I don't appreciate them in general. I don't like the lack of communication with Zuriel when she's meant to be part of this throuple. I just feel like there's a power imbalance there, personally. And no, I'm not talking about the dom and sub dynamic. That is completely different. I think that in their relationship in general, there's just a power imbalance. There's just a weird dynamic there, and I honestly think that they are terrible at communicating with each other. And I personally think that Ursa and Alaric deserve each other because they are just totally trashy, and I think that Zuriel should have found love somewhere else. And those are just my thoughts on it. I don't want to reread the story. I don't want to reopen these wounds. I'm pretty sure I read this book almost a year ago now, and I'm still bitter about it. I love the Wicked Villain series, but I really hate this book. I gave it a 1 star. It was terrible, and I think that out of all ways that The Little Mermaid could have been reimagined in this world, the way that it was reimagined here just made me so sad and so angry for Ariel's character. Never again. I am never going to reread Without Merit by Colleen Hoover. I usually read Colleen Hoover's books to get me out of a reading slump, and Without Merit just so happened to be the second book I had ever read from Colleen Hoover. I read November 9 first, and I appreciated November 9 because it was a problematic fave and it was actually entertaining. Without Merit, this book is not just like not entertaining, it's very much offensive to those who struggle with mental health issues, and it's just terrible. There's essentially a message that is just constantly hammered into your head that everything is all about perspective. So many things happen in this book that just so happen to be cringeworthy. I'm not gonna go into it. Honestly, I'm trying to just forget that this book exists, and I am just never going to revisit it. There are books by Coho that I do plan on maybe revisiting in the future to see whether or not I would change my mind about them. Potentially Ugly Love and Verity, but that's never gonna happen with Without merit. Monsters Born and Made by Tanvi Burwa was a really hard book to read. This book, I don't think is technically terrible. It is very well written, but it is very tragic. I felt like I could not catch my breath at times. It was painful, and I was just waiting for a moment where the protagonist experienced some sort of victory. I just needed them to experience a win, because everything was working against them in this book, and not only that, everything was working against their family, and things happened at the end of the book that I just was not okay with. I really wish that this book had a trigger warning, but now I know, now I'm traumatized. It was a really hard book to read, and I don't recommend it. And the reason why I don't recommend it is because we don't have any closure. I don't know if this book series is going to continue. I know that the author is publishing a companion book that is coming out in this world, but I need to know if the protagonist is ever going to find happiness. This book left me depressed for a week because of how much the protagonist went through. I don't think I'm going to be able to experience it again. And on a lighter note, Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. I am very bitter about the direction of this book, and I think that this book had the potential to be absolutely amazing. I think that we could have had a lot more relationship development between the two characters before the mishap happened, before the final act happened. Yeah, no. For these specific characters, Josh and Hazel, this ending, I'd have to say, was the least appropriate for them. I could see this ending happening for some of the other characters that Christina Lauren have written about previously, but this ending just doesn't work for Josh and Hazel specifically. And also, I'm not gonna lie, I kind of feel like I was catfished, because everyone keeps on saying that Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating is one of the best books by Christina Lauren, because Josh and Hazel have one of the best romantic dynamics. And you know what? I can see that. But I think before it reached its full potential, something happened. And I'm not okay with it. I'm not okay with how the book ended, and I was just left wanting more. I'm not gonna reread it because I just know that I'm gonna be disappointed if I even try again. And the final book series that I never plan on rereading is the Shadow and Bone trilogy. I don't know if I actually ever plan on rereading any books in the Grishaverse, really. But I do have to say never to the rest of the Grishaverse books. But with the Shadow and Bone trilogy specifically, I just don't see a reason to revisit the Shadow and Bone trilogy. It's an okay story, but I just don't really remember getting much out of it, and we were in Alina's head like the entire book series, and I don't think that that is technically a terrible thing, but it is kind of a bad thing if you're wanting us as a readership to root for Mal as well. I don't like Mal in the books, and I think a big reason why I don't really like him is because we never get to see from his perspective. We never get to understand why he is the way that he is, and I think what the Shadow and Bone trilogy lacks is dimension, and I kind of like that we get that from the TV show. Even though the TV show is taking a different route as I'm filming this, I really hope that they do not cancel season 3. I at least want to know how the Netflix writers intend to continue the story and potentially end it, but I do have to say, I am enjoying my experience of watching the TV show more than I ever did reading the original Shadow and Bone trilogy. And I know that is controversial to some because so many readers out there love this trilogy. I just think it's okay, and I think that it lacks dimension. I like Alina in the trilogy, and I liked following Nikolai there too, but there isn't really much more that stands out to me. And I think that's because, in my personal opinion, this trilogy should have been written in third person. So I guess that's gonna be it for this video today, book lovers. If you happen to stay to the end of the video, leave me the yellow heart emoji. And if you happen to enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet already. Join the amazing community of book lovers. And also, I have social medias. I'm at GSwizzleBooks on Twitter and Instagram, and I'm also Goodreads. That's www.goodreads.com/gswizzle. And finally, I'm at TikTok. I'm at GSwizzle on TikTok if you want to follow me there for some bookish content. I love you, book lovers, and I will see you later. Peace.
How did I weigh half and I flipped it in a double? How did I weigh half and I flipped it in a double?